Hey everyone, thank you for dialing into this webinar for Change Management for Agile IT, DevOps or ITIL. We're going to give everyone a couple more seconds here to get dialed in so we can make sure we get going with as many people as we can. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining, everyone. My name is Adam, and I am the Product Marketing Manager for SunView Software. And thank you for attending our webinar entitled Change Management for Agile IT, ITIL or DevOps. Now, we have a couple of quick things I wanted to get out of the way before we get moving. This webinar is being recorded and will be available shortly after its conclusion. For you to come back and reference at any point in case you found some valuable information that you wanted to recover and whatnot. Also, share if you do find that this webinar has any valuable content, I would encourage you to go ahead and share that with your colleagues through any the typical channels, whether it be Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, as we would love to get the information that George is going to be sharing out into the wild and into as many hands as possible to help give knowledge to those that need it. Also, if you do have any questions regarding anything that is covered during this webinar, you can use the BrightTalk's Ask a Question window to submit your questions to the webinar panel. We're going to do our best to get to those questions, but we do have a lot of content lined up. So for whatever reason we do not get to the Q&A at the end, we will be following up with everyone that submits any kind of questions in the course of the next coming days, whether that be George or myself. And that leads us to today's presenters. My name is Adam, as I've already mentioned, and I will be your host. And I am, once again, the Product Marketing Manager here at SunView Software. You can get a hold of me easiest through Twitter at @TheAdamO'Brien or via email at aobrien@sunviewsoftware.com. And also, our main presenter today, he is the co-author of ITIL v3 Continual Service Improvement Core Book and has received the 2012 Ron Munn's Lifetime Achievement Award for being an ITSM industry luminary. He is the foremost authority on ITIL and the Executive Vice President for Pink Elephant. Ladies and gentlemen, we have George Spalding with us today.
Thanks, Adam. Well, are you ready to get going?
I think we got, actually. I'm going to cover the agenda real quick. So we've covered already our introductions. We have George covering DevOps versus ITIL, 5 key observations. And then I will be coming in at the end, looking at the implementing change to support Agile IT, and if time allots, the Q&A.
Sounds good.
And I think we got one poll question that I wanted to get out into the wild, George, before we get going, and that is going to be, what is the status of DevOps in your organization? You should see that popping up right now, and we'll give that about 30 seconds worth of time for votes. All right, sweet. We're going to stop the voting. We're into about 53 people chimed in, so thank you very much. And without further ado, George, I'm going to hand over the reins to you.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. All right, so let's take a quick, all right, there's some nice pictures of Adam and George. There we go. Notice that Adam is young and good looking, and I am old. All right. Okay. All right. So the reports of the death of ITIL have been greatly exaggerated. This is a paraphrase from Mark Twain. But basically, ITIL has been dying for, gosh, I don't know. It's only been around for about 30 years. Not even 30 years, but it's already been dead a number of times. And I think the cloud was the first thing that was killing ITIL. That's it. We don't need any more ITIL. We got cloud. And now we're having a conversation about DevOps and Agile, and that's killing ITIL. So now the question is, what do people say about ITIL? And often it's usually in those cases negative. So first observation, ITIL functions and processes, which of course ITIL now has as of 2007, 2011, ITIL v3 and the upgrade or refresh, ITIL 2011, has some 26 processes and 4 functions that comprise ITIL. And ITIL functions and processes don't fit the new digital enterprise. The new digital enterprise just is way beyond what ITIL needs or what ITIL demands. But DevOps does fit the digital enterprise. All right. So what is this digital enterprise? Basically, most of you are operating or moving towards it, and that's an organization that takes a digital by default approach to design of pretty much anything in their operation. Now, there's some organizations or some applications we've seen recently, like Uber and Spotify and Airbnb, and those kinds of things these are very disruptive and are definitely disrupting the marketplace. That doesn't really have a lot to do with ITIL, but these companies, in many cases, their entire operation, their entire revenue source is based on digital areas. So Uber has an app that can be users can use. That same app or a slightly different app is used by drivers, and then of course there's an administration to that. But basically, the entire business is based on that app, whether how people get paid, how people make money, how customers get cabs, things like that. Very disruptive, especially to the existing cab drivers in the large cities. So the case against ITIL when we're talking about this digital enterprise is that, look, the new business models like Uber, coupled with new ways of buying, owning, and operating technology. So let's just stop there. I mean, basically, there are plenty of organizations now that don't buy any technology. They don't own anything. I mean, that used to be true when you just leased it, but now that's not the way. They don't own it. They don't own it because somebody else owns it, and they buy services from them, and they operate the technology that someone else owns, and often that technology is not even on their physical premises. So those kinds of things that's becoming a very normal way of doing things. And what that really leads us to is the fact that many of these digital enterprises are basically buying services from different service providers. So this means that the fundamental structure of ITIL is no longer relevant. At least that's what the people are saying. So in truth, what's going to happen is, and what is happening today, is that people are still going to buy services. People meaning customers are going to buy services from IT or from computer organizations. They're going to buy services from us or lease services or buy them one transaction at a time, like Uber. So the concept is, okay, so we have this service economy, this service and digital enterprise, but what's underpinning all those services is probably, if it's not internal IT, it's external managed service providers who are selling services into IT that's repackaging that service and then making it available for either end users or business users. So now the question comes is that when that end service, who's controlling the end service? It's going to be IT. Who's supporting the end service? The IT. Who's monitoring the end service? Well, it's probably going to be IT. So the point is that even though we're buying things from outside, even though we might have a completely virtual IT department, the truth is that ITIL has always been focused around managing services. And this is just another way of doing it. It's another way of keeping track of the different components that make up the final service that we then make available to the business customer or the end customer. Because the integrity, the speed, the performance of the services that we're still offering the end customer, that's going to impact business performance. It's going to impact the bottom line. It's going to impact our reputation, our brand. All of that is going to be completely impacted by these services. So I believe that underneath this whole thing, ITIL is actually keeping track, monitoring, keeping a configuration that lets us know, okay, the configuration is no longer a server. The configuration rather is a service. It's rather a service that I bought from this managed service provider or that managed service provider. There are still going to be incidents, still going to be problems, changes, releases, configurations. All that is still going to exist. It might exist on someone else's infrastructure, but it's still going to exist. And the concept or the impact of a bad change is still going to be the same. It's going to be an outage, and that's not what we want. Okay, observation number 2, ITIL kills business agility. So the big premise here is that DevOps promotes agility, and certainly DevOps and Agile are key words in the conversation. I'm sure you're going to hear more about that from Adam. So the business agility in this case is how fast can the business, not IT, can the business respond to a change in the market? How fast can the business turn on a dime? And often the business's turning on a dime is going to be impacted by how fast IT can turn on a dime. And IT turns on a dime as fast as in the old days. Well, I don't know. Let's take a 2-month planning cycle. Let's look into this. That's not going to work now. So we've talked about this for literally 15 years. I've been talking about this. The concept here is that ITIL doesn't really mess up business agility. It's bad ITIL that messes up business agility. In other words, if you really don't have a mature change process, you will mess up business agility because the business will come in and they will say, hi, something just happened, and we have to respond to it, and we really only have a week, maybe 2 weeks to get out there in front of this, or we're going to completely lose that segment of the market. We're going to be screwed. So you, IT, have got to drop everything and do this. Okay, now most IT shops, several things happen. There are some IT shops that say, nope, not going to happen, sorry, you're outside our planning window, so you're screwed. Other IT shops say, okay, we can do it. And then they do it, but they don't really understand how they're able to do it or why they're able to do it. And what they really end up doing is they slip it in, and maybe they do it right, and maybe it works, and maybe it doesn't. A really mature IT shop says, no problem. Let me put this and this and this and this on hold because I know exactly what this and this and this are, and I'll slot you in. We'll get you up and running. We'll do our due diligence. We'll make sure that this change that goes in works and works well. So ITIL, even though is perceived as big, unwieldy, cumbersome, written at a time, basically, I won't deny it, ITIL has its roots in the days of mainframes and came initially from the IBM Red books a million years ago. And business has moved into this new world, but ITIL hasn't caught up. And I disagree. I think that, first of all, we sometimes hear at Pink Elephant the words, hey, let's go, we're going to implement ITIL. Implement ITIL. So we need your help. And the first thing we do is say, okay, well, our help first would be don't implement ITIL. I say, what do you mean? We say, well, ITIL is a framework of possible solutions that we would assume that we would encourage you to cherry pick the solutions out of ITIL, the things that meet your current pain points, the things that can be the quickest wins for you, that basically will get you not just up and running, but up and running faster, more stable, more available, more robust. And then let's talk about other things. But it's a means to an end. It's never the end. We never want people to implement ITIL. They should look at it. It's a framework. It's a set of recommendations on how you might want to do certain processes and how you might want to run certain areas of IT. So when people start talking about agility, I say, have you ever met my wife? And they say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. My wife is a fabulous cook. She really is. She's a fantastic cook. And the fact that I'm overweight is tantamount to that. But the point is, she wants, I'm sorry, are you moving slides, Adam?
George, no, that wasn't me.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, so anyway, my wife is a great cook, but she doesn't really want innovative stove. She wants a stove that heats up to a certain temperature and has burners, and the burners get hot and the burners get cold, and the water's hot when you turn the hot on, cold when you turn the cold on, and the freezer freezes and the refrigerator keeps things cold. And then she's able to do the creative, innovative, agile, create stuff that is so wonderful for me to eat. But she's depending on a rock-solid infrastructure in order to pull that off. So the key is you don't need to choose all of ITIL. You can just pick and cherry pick. And the other piece of this is automation. And I see people say, yeah, but you really can't automate with ITIL. I don't want to break this to you, but you can't automate anything unless the process that you're automating is incredibly mature. Otherwise, you have a decision point in there that says, and in this point, it goes here, then it goes here, then it goes here, then it goes here, and then it goes here, and in this one, magic happens, and magic is people or human beings get involved to make a decision, and that's not automation. Okay, third one. ITIL won't support the Internet of Things. This is just, so what is the Internet of Things? It's what, we're going to hear about for the next 5 years easily and more. But we're talking here not so much about consumer Internet of Things like thermostats and refrigerators and stoves and everything else that are going to be on the home network that's going to be controlled by the home server and the home controller. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that we've got robots, of course, out there in manufacturing environments. We've got nothing but digital equipment in hospitals. All of this digital equipment is on a network and not necessarily under the purview or control of IT. And that, which is really the key on the Internet of Things, these are non-traditional devices that go out and suddenly it's quote on the network or supposed to be on the network. And IT doesn't even know about it, never heard about it, doesn't know anything about it. And that's happening right now. It's happening in manufacturing. It's happening in medicine. One example, which I really liked, was the fact that the help desk got a phone call and said, hey, I'm having trouble getting this portable X-ray machine on the Wi-Fi. And of course, the response from the help desk said they tried desperately not to say, what are you trying to do, hooking a device to the Wi-Fi when you never talked to me? So they didn't say that. They said, oh, let me send out a technician to assist you. But really what was going on in everyone's head is, why would you, an X-ray technician, be trying to put an X-ray machine on the Wi-Fi without ever mentioning it to IT? That's now the norm. That's the norm because they do it at their house. They do it all the time at their house. They put their phone on Wi-Fi. They put their tablet on Wi-Fi, their laptop on Wi-Fi, their kids' phones are on Wi-Fi. They're screaming at their kids about the data plan, so the kid goes, let me get on Wi-Fi. And this is normal stuff. So now going to work and putting the X-ray machine on Wi-Fi, why should I be calling IT? I do this at home all the time. So that just becomes a totally normal thing, and that's the new normal. So the business side of the Internet of Things will soon come to dominate the enterprise, already happening. ITIL will have nothing to offer. I'm sorry, I don't quite understand this. If an asset, whatever it is operationally significant enough that you care about its stability, I need this X-ray machine to work, I need this robot to work, or we shut down the assembly line, and so you want to keep it up and running, then it needs to be managed in some way. I need to know what's there. I need to understand the address. I need to know how much bandwidth it takes. I need to know some stuff about this device, this thing, whatever it may be. ITIL has never cared what things are managed. Obviously, in the old days, all of these things that we have now weren't around. But that doesn't care. If you want to manage tablets, if you want to manage phones, if you want to manage X-ray machines and robots, fine, no problem. But there are things about, because these are basically computers, as we all know, everybody who has a smartphone. These are all mini computers. So now what? Well, guess what? Computers actually break sometimes. So when something breaks, who do they call? Almost inevitably, whether it's an X-ray machine or a PC or a tablet, if it's at work, they call the service desk. That's no questions asked. So they call the service desk. Now we want to provide that service because we want them to be back up and running as quickly as possible. And the truth is that there's probably no faster way to get them back up and running than to call the service desk or to access a knowledge base that's probably provided by the service desk. So people have been using basic IT principles to manage non-traditional IT for years. Number 4, ITIL won't scale. What's the scale? Well, there's two kinds of scale, really. We're talking about the explosion of devices. There's going to be 25. There's 5 billion now. There's going to be 25 billion in 2020. By 2020, there'll be more than 44 billion terabytes of data in the world, and almost more than a third of it will be monitoring data on devices. So the number of enterprise applications optimized for mobility will quadruple by just next year. So this stuff is moving fast. It's moving really fast. So now the question is, ITIL was conceived, of course, back in the mainframe days in the beginning, way before the digital transformation, and nobody predicted this explosion of the technology infrastructure. The processes will break as the device volumes increase exponentially. I basically agree with this in that if you treat these devices in exactly the same way that we are treating computers today or laptops today, they will break. We won't be able to do that. We won't be able to do what we have done in the past. We have to basically change the way we operate, but it doesn't mean that ITIL's did. It means, once again, we have to pick and choose. What elements do we want to keep track of and do we want to manage? Do we just want to know these things exist and that's it? So we want some kind of configuration or asset management? Or do we want some way to remotely access them? What about the famous laptop with corporate data on it? We've been dealing with that for years, for decades. Now we have phones with corporate data on them. What happens when someone loses the phone? Well, if they've signed the appropriate agreement, etc., we can wipe the phone. We can only do that if we know about the phone, if we've installed an agent on it, and we know what code is required in order to wipe it. We can only do that if we have all of that in place. Where is that going to be? Who's going to keep track of that? That's all basically ITIL configuration management. So we basically can't just decide that things are now, ITIL's old and ITIL's old like me and not young and smart like Adam. So we're basically, it's now what's going on. We have to basically say, okay, we have an issue where now we have the computer is in your pocket or your purse. It's no longer in a laptop case. And that computer is filled with corporate data and corporate email, and that corporate data may indeed be proprietary, and we can sit around and argue about Hillary Clinton's email, but the point is that it may even be need to be highly secured. So we obviously need to know about the device that it's on, and we obviously need to know, and then we get to the next phase. We've already had the first automobile hack. We already have now had the computers in automobiles be hacked by some outside hacker. We're talking some interesting ramifications. So now we need to start understanding the security aspect, because when people start pumping out X-ray machines and when they start, because every prescription is now dispensed based on a computer. Obviously, a human being has to touch the pills, but other than that, it's dispensed based on a computer. In hospitals, almost all of it's computerized, though I have noticed that they're doing a lot more air checking now, personal, live, human air checking. They keep asking if it's me, which is kind of interesting. Is this you? Is this you? But the point is that all of this Internet of Things that everybody keeps talking about, great, except that now we open up the security floodgates and how we're going to secure these devices, and more correctly, who's responsible for that? Who's accountable for that kind of security? And when the security breaks or when the hack happens, who responds? I believe that ITIL has a place even in the Internet of Things. So last but not least, ITIL and DevOps are totally incompatible. IT shops have to choose one or the other. If they've been doing ITIL and they want to embrace DevOps, they got to dump ITIL. That's the key. All right, so what's DevOps? For the most part, DevOps is a software development method that embraces or emphasizes continual deployment of much smaller incremental releases, like even every couple of weeks or every month. Those kinds of release cycles that are really, really short, which basically do away with what we've known for years as the waterfall method. So this aims to accelerate the life cycle of software development, make it fast, make the transition, which is almost a constant transition. You're almost in transition all the time. Make that smooth because it's a very small number of things that change each time. It's not this big, giant, big bang of a new app that's coming in. It's all these little small things that are able to be put in, are able to be tested, and then able to be put in, and hopefully that will be very smooth. It incorporates Agile as a concept, Scrum, sprints within Agile and Scrum, all of these things. And it's fabulous. It's fantastic. So the real question is, do I have to dump ITIL? So the case against it is ITIL's been focused on ops since its first version. In fact, it stood for, in those days, the IT infrastructure library. It was an operation framework. It really hasn't ever had anything for developers, so ITIL just left dev to the coders. And development and ops, over time, seemed to be procedurally and philosophically opposed, and they couldn't get together. So now where are we? Well, I believe that ITIL's goal has always been successful service delivery. It clearly references the value of Agile-based approaches. It's not against Agile. Things get confused when an organization strives or says, we're going to be Agile across the board, so ITIL has to go. I believe now that as we sit here in 2015, the dev and ops are moving on to the same page. They're talking to each other. No more does dev throw things over the fence to ops and just washes their hands of whatever comes out of it. Because the case for DevOps is far too compelling to ignore. Because I think that it does indeed give you the benefits that it promises. But I don't understand the desire to desperately dump ITIL. So let me sum up. I think DevOps is definitely the good-looking new kid. It's more than just a pretty face. It's got a mantra of continuous delivery, and it marks the end of the waterfall development method, which I totally agree with. Today's digital enterprises have to be agile to remain competitive. But the basics of IT, the blocking and tackling, haven't really changed. A solid ITIL foundation underneath that can underpin a fast-moving IT shop, protect its investment, kind of like my wife and her kitchen, where she's got a solid infrastructure and then goes to town. True creativity is built on that rock-solid, dependable infrastructure. I'm going to turn it over to Adam now.
Holy cow. Thank you, George. You covered some great points, and I'm especially excited to kind of dig into that even more, seeing how ITIL and DevOps can play in the same sandbox and get along. With that, I do want to cover a few things in looking at some of the opportunities and recommendations when looking at utilizing change management strategies within your organizations to help usher along ITIL and DevOps strategies and best practices. I think the one thing that we can all take a look at and agree on is that automation is absolutely critical for achieving efficiencies in all modes of IT delivery, whether it be ITIL or DevOps or any of the Agile IT movements. And some of the recommendations that we have here at SunView, some of the big things that we can recommend when looking at implementing or further leveraging the change management processes are make change management a priority. Doing this provides your organization with a single source for all change logs and increases visibility for improved risk and compliance management. Establish different modes of change to balance speed, quality, and risk. Streamline your processes to fit those needs of your business. And finally, integrate change into your DevOps toolchain. Automating the capture of change records with artifacts is going to lead to an improved collaboration and also builds a complete auditable history that you can then reference upon if the need ever comes along. And here at SunView, we spent well over the last decade talking to our customers and working with hundreds of enterprise-level customers and discussing how to leverage change management in their organizations as well as implement change automations to fit their organizational needs. We've been taking a listen to what all of our customers have had to say as well as gathering feedback from the market as a whole and analysts in regards to the needs of multimodal IT structures. And I'm glad to announce that we have an incredible new offering coming around coming this fall. Change management, we've made it to engineered to support Agile IT specifically. With that, some of the great new things that we've been able to work and support is the multimodal change workflows, which supports unique workflows for your entire organization from ITIL procedures to DevOps automation. It's all underneath one hood. We now support the DevOps toolchain, which supports easy integration with tools like Puppet, Chef, and Microsoft TFS through RESTful API connections. We can switch back and forth between CAB and peer review processing, supporting both ITIL and DevOps change management and advisory boards. So no matter what mode of IT your organization uses, ChangeGear is going to be able to get you there and through that process. We also have Change Manager Dashboard, which provides the metrics needed to help your organization achieve success, as well as Service Management Integration, which is looking to either integrate fully with the ChangeGear ITSM platform or any existing ITSM solution that you may currently have in place. And that is gunning for a fall 2015 release. And if you have any questions or want more information on that, you can always reach out to me, and we can do that through a couple different routes. So what I want to do, I don't want to leave us hanging just on this webinar. I definitely want to interact as much as possible with everyone that attended. You can actually do that through a couple different routes. One is we have a LinkedIn group that we're starting to leverage, and that is called Change Management for ITSM. And you can go jump in there, request access. We'll get you approved, and we can continue the conversations around change management and how that works within an ITIL or DevOps environment or Agile IT as well. You can also shoot a tweet out to either at SunView Software, which is our company's Twitter account, or use the hashtag ITIL or DevOps. You can also feel free to tweet at me at the Adam O'Brien if you want to give me any presenting tips or any great ITIL or DevOps-based jokes. I'm always looking for a good laugh in the office. And finally, you should all be subscribed, but in case you aren't, the SunView Bright Talk channel is the place to go to not only catch the recap and rebroadcast of this webinar, but also we have additional webinars planned. I believe we have 2 for the rest of the year, and then we're going to continue that on through the start of the 2016 year. So make sure to keep an eye on that and keep lock and loaded and ready for that on your calendar. So finally, I'm going to take a look and see what questions we may have. And George, you still hanging around?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Awesome. We do have one that came in, and it says, how do you integrate service management tools? Any SM software preferred or proven?
I'm afraid that's a you. That's not a me. That's a SunView question.
Yes, absolutely. what I'll do is I'll follow up with that. And yes, we have a ton of different service management tools that we can integrate with, and we are extremely flexible in regards to what we can do. So I will follow up with you after the conclusion of this webinar and get you some more information regarding on that. And for those of you who are wondering also, I will be putting this deck onto LinkedIn SlideShare shortly after. I would say probably by no later than probably this afternoon, so that you can download that and have access to that and use it as you need, and we can get that taken care of for you guys. And then, George, this might be a good one for you. How does the CAB change in DevOps versus ITIL?
Yeah, cool question. So first of all, let's make sure everybody knows what the CAB is, Change Advisory Board. So this is the famous change board that everybody all changes must go to get approved, which gives change management a bureaucratic flair, if you will, or feeling. So the CAB traditionally has been the body which approves what I would consider fairly large or decent sized changes, or at least things that have reasonable impact. The way change management should work, and this is going to be really fast, trust me, is there should be, when there's really big changes, obviously you should go to the change board, because that then becomes the accountable body for making the decision, approving the change, assisting in the scheduling of the change, assisting in the implementing of the change, and basically making sure that this change, with whatever limited impact or not limited impact, goes through successfully. So they're the accountable body. Change manager obviously gets involved, etc. But there's a lot of other changes or smaller changes that can be, first of all, there can be standard changes which don't need to go to anybody you just go through and execute them. And then there's kind of a middle ground where a change can actually be approved by the change manager as long as they're willing to accept accountability if the change fails. So the CAB basically just becomes a lot more frequent and maybe a lot more virtual in the world of DevOps, but we still should have an idea of what changes are going to happen when, even if that's a daily occurrence or a weekly occurrence or a monthly occurrence. Whatever it is, we still need to understand what changes are happening, because as anybody who's listening to this will validate, changes run into each other. They collide, and when changes collide, things go bad for IT and things go worse for the customer. So all it does is speed it up, make it a lot more virtual, and maybe the agenda is much smaller because things are much quicker.
Sweet. That's awesome. And then I think we do have one more this, so that may be perfectly in your ballpark, George. And it said, what steps should organizations take to find the right balance between implementing ITIL processes while staying fast and agile?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you shouldn't implement an ITIL process you don't need. So in other words, you need to basically say, what are my pain points? And usually if somebody has no ITIL or just getting into ITIL or never even heard of ITIL, usually the pain points center around change and change management. It's usually what people are screaming about, where they're saying, either it's way too bureaucratic and it's way too slow, which is the reputation of ITIL change process, which really means that the change process has been done wrong, has been implemented incorrectly, because that was never the goal. That was never the way it was supposed to be. ITIL change implemented in accordance with ITIL, right along chapter and verse, can be very efficient and very swift. But don't implement any ITIL processes you don't need. Don't implement, and don't ever hear me say or let anyone in your organization say, why do I have to do that? Because ITIL says you do. Bad. Slap them. Somebody should get slapped, because ITIL is never a Bible. It's always a recommendation. You should never be doing things because ITIL says. You should allow ITIL to help you. It is a means to an end. It's never an end.
Perfect. Thank you so much, George. George. And I do have a whole bunch of other ones that I definitely want to follow up with. And what you'll be seeing is an email from myself or coming out or from one of my team members within the next day or two, following up with some of the questions, because there's a lot of great questions here. But I also did want to take some time to wrap this up. And on behalf of George, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, George, and covering the DevOps and ITIL sides within the Agile IT environment. On behalf of SunView Software, I do want to thank everyone for joining us, taking some time to hang out and take a look at everything that we covered today. Once again, I will be making the deck available through LinkedIn SlideShare through the SunView Software channel. That will be no later than this afternoon, and you should be having a replay available of this particular webinar in the next 5 to 10 minutes on our Bright Talk channel. And with that, I think that, George, thank you again. I look forward to hanging out with you again in the near future with another webinar. We have some planned, and that is all. So thank you so much, everyone, and we'll make sure to reach out either by LinkedIn, Twitter, or through email, and let us know if you have any other questions or any comments.
Thanks, Adam. Bye-bye.
All right. See you guys.